Ask him about his rocks. Hey, buddy, I'm busy. See how you guys? See who you are? Well, we gotta get you a mic that works.
Yes. Oh no, I forgot to get a picture. Is it okay if I sneak in here? Thank you.
Hi, Javon.
Very good. Very good. Loved it. Thanks for your
Getting
service.
working microphones.
No, appreciate Bruce. Appreciate it.
Him and I
Okay.
know him. You sounded
All right.
fantastic on
Well,
stage.
I don't know. Start saying who you are
I never seen you
first.
speak in person. I was like,
You know. I don't know.
Hello, as you guys might have heard, I'm Brian from the HoneyComb Farm.
yay!
I'm Chris from Shamanic Roots.
Me from HBR.
I'm from HBR.
Kind of deep. But yeah, just to start out, like, what kind of extracts are your favorite to make? I'm not gonna get too far into equipment yet, but like, what extracts do you make? How'd you get started in this? Who taught you? Brief, kind of. Hey, how you doing?
So I want to talk to you more later.
So
Thanks,
I'm a hydrocarbonation extraction specialist. I got into extraction
there's a girl I came to listen
quite
to
a few
me,
years ago. Started out
Sydney?
open blasting, gone all the way down to where we are today. And I mean, like this comes out, from the old school moonshine days of extraction now to where we're utilizing the, all this new tech, closed loop extraction and ethanol extractions and stuff like that.
So my first cousin retired Air Force Pentagon.
I started,
I joke with
I
them.
don't really remember at this point now, it seems like forever. Back in 2012, and I started with ice water extraction and hash making and ethanol
And so,
extraction and turning that into forms of shatter without messing with butane at that point.
So you used
Open
to
blasted
spend a lot of time
before,
in
and then once I realized that it wasn't the correct thing to do, I stopped doing that until I had equipment to operate safely.
You can. I know you're very busy.
I'll make time.
Networking.
Pretty much, I started out with open blasting a long time ago.
Growing for more than 40
We all did.
I started with bubble hash.
Well, yeah.
I did not start open blasting. I actually started with a $50,000 closed loop system, and I was not very great at it. It turns out that obviously the material had a lot more to do with it than I realized at first, but I'm one of the few people in extraction that didn't ever open blast anything, except for that one time Ben did it in my courtyard.
Boom. So yeah, I'm just gonna dive right into it. You guys all have basic understanding and much more of closed loops. What do you think about this color remediation tech? Is it possible to do it without a secondary solvent? And does it strip terps?
Color remediation, it's actually chromatography, and we're utilizing clays to make the media. It's basically utilizing, it's chromatography, which is the movement of different particles through the media. So what it's stripping is like anything from chlorophylls to heavy metals, and it's not really stripping the terps or anything like that. It's moving your THC and all the good stuff and remediating out all the bad stuff.
Sweet. Chris, what do you know about this craziness?
So the thing that I think a lot of people are on the fence is that certain people are using it illegitimately, as in cleaning up subpar product and passing it off.
Well, people are washing diamonds with a secondary solvent like pentane. That's mint.
Yeah.
Not like something like inline chromatography with clay like he's talking about. I don't know. It's like I compare it to running dry trim for hash as compared to fresh frozen. It's like the color difference is that much.
The thing though with terpenes is actually I've seen one extraction that utilized CRC, and it came back with one of the highest terpene results I've had so far.
Damn.
So it's definitely not cutting terps out of it, and it's also won several competitions too. So
You guys in the back? Well, not in the back. HBR. I remember that Bogart system, that 7.5, I called you guys. I was way over my head. I'm like, what the fuck am I gonna do? You know? There was some kind of weird charcoal filter in that. All the charcoal ended up in the solid.
Yeah, and I think that was some failed attempt at early color remediation, you know. Like you said, like color remediation is just a term that is talking about taking a dark product that would be dark under normal circumstances and making it clean or palatable. And like you both said, there's a couple different ways of getting to that product. And I think that when you're using dual solvents, you're definitely going to end up losing a lot more than you would in a a multimedia filtration system with some solid media. But if you're using something like pentane, anytime your terpenes and cannabinoids are very volatile, and they do break down every time you handle them. They don't like to be touched. You make hash, and the more you touch it, the more you end up breaking it down. So,
Anna, what do you think?
Honestly, it's as long as everything's being lab tested and coming out fine, I don't see a problem with color remediation. We clean up things all the time to make them more palatable to ourselves. I'm a chef. I take sausage and I make it really good. If you think about what sausage is, you really don't want to eat it.
Right. So, all right, next question. What do you guys think of the fresh frozen bubble hash, freeze dried, as opposed to air dried? I don't know. And what do you think about these people charging $100 a gram for it?
It's a lot of work, and it's well worth it.
So I've heard of people modifying ice machines and just like not telling you how they modified their ice machine, and that's their tech.
I mean, the thing is the amount of work and the actual results that you get from your percentage return is marginally so low that it ends up equating to roughly that. Like I had made it one time and I ran 2 ounces just for my head, just to see how it went. So whatever you value that at, I ended up with like 5-6 grams of hash rosin at the end of that for 2 ounces. So
That's tricky with strains. Different strains will come different.
yeah.
I never liked fresh frozen because I had issues collecting it at the bottom of the bag. But these guys, they're just taking it, pouring it like BHO onto a tray, and then throwing it in a freeze dryer. And it's like
The test that I've seen from, again, I haven't personally seen it myself, but like I've seen tests from the cryo freeze drying machines, and like the same flower is dried cured normally versus through that, and the terpenes are higher reserves. So I mean, it could have a lot to do with it. Proper drying too, but there's people that have their own tech to dry it normally without any assistance, and still crushing it.
All right, so this has been really cool today, watching a lot of these panels about social equity and, like what we should do now, that thing, like all the fighting's been done and all this other stuff, but a lot of these people up here, I know for a fact, did not come up where anything was legal. They didn't learn what they know from, a book at a school, at a college, or whatever, we come up running from police, who are historically the enemy. And, we're, a couple of us have in the past heartily represented the black market. Where do you think we're going with all this? Is everybody going to need a C1, like an $80,000 to $100,000 C1D1 room to run hydrocarbon? Because in that case, people just eliminate hydrocarbon and start running alcohol.
People should need to be licensed and actually trained before handling butane and hexane and all of those other anes, because it's not a safe gas unless you know what you're doing.
Right, facts.
However, that certification and training should not be prohibitively expensive.
But realistically, who's qualified to train?
Right, exactly.
Who's going to accept liability issues? How about Best Value Vax in those places? They'll sell you a bunch of stuff to build a closed loop, but then if you build a closed loop and blow up, it ain't their fault. It's like they have a piecemeal lawnmower making company. Order pieces of a lawnmower and you get a lawnmower. If you chop your hand off, it's your own fault, right? What do you think of that, B? Not a question.
Well, what I have to say is dealing with the safety factors. I do believe that with hydrocarbons, you should actually have it, especially with recent events that has happened out in Maine. just the other day, last week, and it made national news.
Talking about Farmington propane.
Farmington, that is correct, and it was actually right next to my sister's house. This building, like we can't smell the propanes and the butanes or any of the tanes. We cannot smell it because we are utilizing a food grade material, and it fills up these rooms, and you can't smell it. So you have to have detectors and stuff to allow it to. I mean, like, just for safety reasons. I mean, just going down to the ground zero of it the other day. I mean, like, this whole building was brand new. I watched it being built, and it was just completely gone. It's just completely obliterated. It's gone. And I do believe that people should have them. But granted, I started out, and for most of my career, until I had been able to go to the other side of the market, I learned, and without a C1D1, it was a no one D1. No one C1, yeah.
Yeah.
No one C1, that's right.
I mean, how about the rest of you guys? Where are we going with all this?
I think the thing is that if you look at anything with a probability, every piece has a potential to fail at some point. So when that happens, if you don't have a response to evacuate the air in that space, you now have a bomb. So the fact of that's more so than anyone making a mistake. It's more of like, this valve's going to break after 500,000 turns, and if it doesn't get properly replaced or maintenance and whatnot. So it is important, but it's going to be tough. They shouldn't. I mean, how expensive they are, I think, is more of the liability. Is probably why there's so much money.
I don't know. I mean, when you look at this transition from this illegitimate sort of subterfuge-based industry of hash making, where I have to essentially hide my operations and stuff, and I can move it into an industrial space. I mean, you look at auto body paint shops, powder coating shops, anything that's any sort of metal plating, and they're all required to have certain air quality standards and evacuation systems and fire suppression and other such things. So I don't see it as being too far of a stretch to require that of our extractors. You know what I mean? It is.
Yeah, right on. How about you, Hannah? You got a microphone over there? Nice.
I really do believe that safety standards for that's super important because there are far too many idiots in the world.
Right, but who's qualified to write the SOP?
Why are our labs qualified to test our stuff?
That's an excellent point.
Why is OSHA?
Right. I mean, there are people,
OSHA is good for giving you a fine.
There are people that have materials handling.
Right, and then they're going to fine you, but they're not actually going to show you how to do this correctly.
So in Maine, up until a little while ago, all you really needed was a caregiver card, and just, with the intention to file a processor license or whatever the hell.
Everything changes. It moves on. This is an ever-growing industry, and we need to think about the longevity of the safety of what we want to do.
And the difference between Massachusetts and Maine is, like, in Maine you can do it with a couple $1,000. In Mass you need 500 racks in escrow. And like.
It's ludicrous how much we need to spend to do it, but I think that the money should be spent on having correct facilities and some kind of idea of who's qualified. It's a great question.
Who's qualified to say who's qualified?
Why are we qualified to be up here?
Shit, I'm not. That's why I'm here. You guys are up there. All right, so next question, lighthearted, kinda. Who's your favorite extractor's favorite extractor? B. Who's your favorite extractor? Don't say yourself.
I can't say
But-
myself.
Come on, who's somebody that you look at that
But
is
it
like,
is
wow,
Brian.
that guy's fucking awesome.
I look and after like people that are writing these SOPs like Meg Murphy and the dreaded pirate that are out there creating these SOPs for the rest of the world to go and learn for this color remediation. I'm looking. It's really hard.
And then you'll get you'll get Elliot saying that he taught Future and those guys, and that Magisil was, that was his thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's hard for me to actually pinpoint who's my favorite, but I mean, like I look at all these people that are paving this way for our industry, and I learn from them, and they learn from me, and it's a really good symbiotic relationship. So I mean, I respect everybody in the industry that is doing this game and doing
That
it
hits
right.
me in the feels, dude. Chris, you need a microphone. Who's your favorite extractor, or whose shit do you like to smoke the most? Like
Well, Worldwide Extracts is also really
worldwide, I've seen the label. Yeah. How about you, Ben?
Currently that girl right now.
Yeah, Siobhan. Yep, she grows fireweed. Note her back. All right, so we have a unanimously main bias panel here.
Incredibly
Ladies and
biased.
gentlemen.
Look at her.
All right, so
Maine's killing it right now.
yep, so none of us are gonna blow up. What do you guys think of CO2?
Quack.
So a while ago, I had read something. I don't know the accuracy of it, and this is kind of off the top of my head. But there was, he was a molecular biologist or some sort of chemist that is way more intelligent than me, and thoroughly explained how when you use CO2 and you do an extraction, that it's changed. Some sort of acid converts with the CO2, so if you don't replace the gas every time, it creates something that's very bad for people to consume, and they don't.
Something called popcorn lung.
I believe that would end up probably being the thing. So I haven't had any good CO2 extract. Let me just put it that way.
Same.
Agreed.
Consensus. No CO2. CO2's mids. All right, so how about dry ice, just in general, aside from jacketing? Same thing, mids, no dry ice. Do not mix your trim with dry ice and throw it in a bubble bag and think you're making hash. You're not.
Well, it fractures all of the glandular material of everything you're doing because it freezes it so much. So you're just blowing. It's like I'm gonna make an omelet and taking a bunch of eggs and being like,
Right.
That's not what you want.
Right. There'll be eggs there. It'll smell like eggs for a little while. Yeah, but when you introduce dry ice to trim, the direct contact and then agitation, and you just flash freeze your trichomes, and then when you agitate them, you break them, terpenes just spill everywhere. So you can do it for distillate. You can throw some dry ice in a tumbler and rip some trim and wash it with alcohol and make distillate out of it, but that's about it. So with all the stuff in the news about the vapes and those kind of stupid people mixing vitamin E acetate or trying to recreate vitamin E acetate to cut it with distillate and trying to blame it on weed people, what do you guys think of all that? Because that's what it is the vitamin E acetate that's in the vape liquid, yeah?
Test your shit.
Yeah, so don't buy bootleg carts.
Yeah, I mean that's just frankly what it is know where your product's coming from. Know who the people are. Don't buy bootleg. Don't trust just randos. I mean,
If the price is too good to be true, it's probably boof. I
Right.
mean, the thing is when people are trying to cut corners. I mean, I've personally received quote unquote distillate as far as medication, and I brought it to MCR Labs, and it tested out at 3% THC. It wasn't even.
They figured it out to being pine sap?
It's literal fugazi. There are people out there trying to cut corners and make a buck however they can. So,
Yep.
I mean, buyer beware, for real. I mean, buy your stuff from a trusted source, from people who know what's up.
We had a guy try to sell us a liter of hemp distillate, $9,000.
Another thing too is if you happen to be that person, take a few bucks and take it to a lab and get it tested to make sure you're not poisoning people.
But then what's a lab? My boss, we're not a testing facility, but he bought a $12,000, gas chromatograph, and he has a guy in there that he pays $20 an hour to sit there and read little charts. But then Brian gets a test that's 99 point something. He gives me a test that says 92. There's just a variation in cheap equipment. You're not a testing facility if you have one little machine like that.
Well, no, an actual legit, MCR Labs, for instance.
Right.
MCR Labs right there.
MCR Labs. Bring it to
Nice.
them, and they'll set you right.
Sweet. It's $50 down here or something.
It's $50 to get a basic cannabinoid profile. You can spend up to $150 and get a full spectrum test.
See, it's
every
more than
different
that, man.
thing.
It's a pain in the ass, all right?
Well, honestly, they've made testing pretty easy here in Mass, and I feel like people underutilize the fact that we have labs here. If you don't think your meds are clean, go test them.
So,
why are you smoking dirty things if you have a choice?
I'm not in favor of more extensive testing just because it's just more regulations and more crap that you guys are going to have to do,
Life is regulations and crap.
But science, the people that actually understand what you're trying to purge out of there and at what point it's gone, how extensive do your testing things have to be to people
I mean, so I get the who's measuring stick are we using argument when it comes to perhaps certain legislators writing laws about some concepts they don't fully understand or grasp. And I think a lot falls to a scientific integrity when it comes to labs and laboratory functions. I think that Massachusetts has a relatively small pool of labs operating amongst one another, so that tends to keep it honest. When I've talked to the directors or some of the lab technicians who work for both Proverde and MCR, they seem to be very genuinely interested in striving for precision and accuracy as far as what they're delivering as a product, which is accurate testing.
It's just like, people got to get started somewhere. So like, it's okay to make bubble hash with ice water in your basement with 5-gallon buckets. It is not so much okay to buy a small closed loop and try to, wing it as you go and watch YouTube videos. Because really, you might just be near an ignition source and
not only that, beyond that, what are you vac purging that with? There's so many steps to making an extract safe that somebody who's just stumbling through it is like any of us 5 to 10 years ago making terrible decisions.
But really, exactly that was legal in Maine until not so long ago. You can go to Oklahoma right now and you're going to run into that same set of non-regulation regulations. They're just kind of like,
I feel like it's going to happen in every single state. And you'll see it. You'll just see it kind of wave over, and then
people with
everybody
skills like
will go
yours,
through the legislation, and then they'll look at the states that already existed, just like we did with Colorado, and then somebody else has probably looked at Massachusetts to see about their legalization. It's going to happen.
I love talking about this stuff.
The thing that did it for me is when I figured out that butane, when it ignites, expands in a 7-to-1 ratio. So in a very simple thing, if you took a room and filled it with basketballs and snapped your finger, and then every basketball multiplied by 7, that's how explosive it is.
Just a 2-pound column. I watched a video of a guy, the static from the door plus a heat gun, ignited some. Guys' eyelids were like straight melting off. They were running. Yeah, it was no, and it's like.
Hence safety.
Yeah. So, how do you make crack shatter with alcohol? Anyone?
Oh, I know how to do that.
Really?
That's how I started.
Really? So how do you do that?
It was a video called Absolute Shatter, and what I found out is that if you freeze the material and freeze the alcohol, and then mix it through a strainer so it falls out almost immediately and strips everything as quick as possible without warming up, then you take that, winterize it, freeze it, and run it through a filter that's also cold and wet, so you don't.
So if you went beyond even freezing it and like made a dry ice slurry with a jacket and dunked a pot of alcohol in there, or a pot of 200 proof lab grade,
Can I make a comment about all this dry ice? We're talking about how unsafe butane is, but dry ice and
displacing
alcohol
oxygen
and slurries, they're pretty unsafe too. That stuff is negative 200 degrees. That stuff is
might burn you a little.
It'll burn you. Be careful, don't spill it, you know what I mean? You have to, just because it's dry ice, just because it's CO2, doesn't inherently make it safer than any other extraction method. With the exception of ice water hash.
Hash is safe.
Right, hash is safe.
It might be mid sometimes, but it'll be safe. And those CO2 systems, they run at a pressure to where if one of those little pipes bursts, you're going to lose an eye.
If any of them are to burst, it's like 3,000 psi.
Yeah, ow.
Where like butane is only 50. Running at maybe 50 psi. I mean, I do believe that they need to be inside of explosion-proof containers, not necessarily C1D ones, but C1D2 spaces. But yeah, they are very. I mean, they need to be contained. They shouldn't be just in, just an air. They need to have pressurized vessels that they need to be ran in.
Right. So what's next? What's going to be the next thing? It was diamonds, and then fresh frozen bubble. What are the flat rims going to pay $100 a gram for next?
Hash rosin.
Hash rosin?
Hash
I said that 2 years ago. Nobody listened to me.
No, it's hash rosin.
I was sitting right there at a panel just like this 2 years ago talking about how rad hash rosin was. Tyler, well.
Then again, it's about how much effort goes into it, and a really good hash maker makes a really good product. You want to spend the money on that.
That's very true.
Mission Hill melts 1 first and second.
Oh yeah.
With hash rosin.
He's been doing this for a very long time. Christ, what else?
Now, there's a thing that I have against the hash rosin.
Okay.
What about your heavy metals? You know, you're concentrating a form and you're not being able to pull out any of the heavy metals. You have to know your beginning product.
Right.
You know, this goes all the way back to the growers, all the way back to that point. I mean, you gotta, even if that stuff tests out at 22 parts per million of heavy metals, and
that's still too much, yeah.
And in the flour, now all of a sudden you're at, 500 parts per million in your extract.
Yeah, so heat and pressure aren't going to negate that. Yeah.
No, it's not going to move it out. I mean, it's not remediating out any kind of like molds, mildews. I mean,
for me, it was just trying to get it in me to dedicate an entire pound or entire couple pounds that I could get a few $1,000s for. Ice it up and do it. I'm good. I'm used to running dry trim out in the hills. By the 250 pound bale. Like, I'll tell you, it's nothing like driving up a road with way too much shit in your car, And like, extractors know the feeling. Even if it's you're trying to get rid of your raffinite, you think about it like, or your spent material. It's like, wow, if the wrong idiot cop sees this is 500 pounds of weed, How am I doing, Slim, for time? Any of you guys got extracts questions? What's up?
So, if the mineral content in your extract is too high, is that just improper flushing on the grower?
It could go anywhere down to the media that you grow in, rock wool. I mean, Jungle Boys just tested out for some of their flour that had too high for that. It's flushing. It could be utilizing RO waters, like having to utilize RO water. Because, I mean, frankly, well...
RO water has like milk, or distilled water would have nothing.
Right, but when it comes down to having distilled water and all that stuff, you need some of the minerals. You need to start adding back in like your calcium, magnesium, and you gotta get in there. And then salts, you're utilizing salt bases. I mean, that's a heavy metal right there. You have to be able to clean this stuff out. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I was on the rant. But basically, it comes down to like flushing. It comes down to what your media is that you're growing in. It comes down to a lot of different factors, and that's pretty much it.
40 years ago, as I learned to grow, I learned how to crossbreed between cannabis and hops, and then treat the second generation with colchicine, which is used for arthritis and rheumatism. It changes all the resin production, all the energy, high THC resin production. First generation will kill you. Second generation is like Lebanese blonde. So I'm wondering, if you have some thoughts about this.
I can say that Lebanese hash, like any like darker stuff, is like dated, artisan hash, to put it very politely.
I mean, I would keep going with it, see what you can do. I mean, as long as if you're working on something that you're creating that's never been around before, like, go for it.
Or that has been around for a long ass fucking time.
It's like Keith.
Right on.
This hash, it's always stuck.
Testing heavy metals. How are we going to do it?
I don't hate on it. It's a craft.
Yeah. And anything. I mean, Christ, it seems like heavy metals and bubble hash, that actually kind of rings in my head like it could happen.
How do we get the heavy metals out of this shit to begin with?
Right, magnets. Huge magnets.
Listen, that sounds like the government and I need a tinfoil hat
Right?
and shit.
We got to use science.
It still definitely comes down to the grower. And the thing is, if growers test what they're producing, they'll learn what their flushing methods are either going to succeed or not succeed in what they're trying to do. So testing can be a huge thing to utilize that. So if you're producing stuff that doesn't have heavy metals, even though you're utilizing them within your grow, it's completely possible.
Right on. So what do you guys think about extracting psilocybin with a closed loop?
Use honey.
Honey? What about concentrating it?
Anything can be concentrated.
Let's go to Oregon.
Might be better off with CO2.
Oh no, CO2.
On that note, has anyone ever
Like-
tried to
like-
get, like strawberries or anything anything in the column with it?
Okay, so at a High Times, a guy won. The company's name was Bubblicious. He won, and without realizing, he was talking to the guy that runs the competition. He was like, "Yeah, so I ran it with freeze-dried strawberries and freeze-dried bananas in it, and I shit you not, that shit tasted so fucking good. It was so tasty." And then he got his win yanked from him. I believe it's Seattle, because you're not allowed to add things beyond cannabis.
Yo, so who's putting some frozen strawberries in their column next week?
Freeze-dried.
Might do that.
Yeah, you can do it.
So, I would never put anything like that in my machine, but going back to hops, okay, so my wife and I, we went down and we just decided to go to Open Source Deal and see what their training course was, and of course they don't have stuff in a C1D1, and so they were utilizing hops, and it made this like really funky like black goo, and it looked pretty ruthless. But
Brian, did you eat the goo?
No, but they told me I should add it to beer.
That'd be good.
Yeah, very hoppy.
Right. Okay, so how about DMT? Should we or should we not utilize the equipment we have to make things like DMT? Should we legally be allowed to?
So my machine was called an OB, and it was just an organic botanical extractor.
Nice.
It's not meant for any one thing.
You put cloves in there.
You can put cinnamon, you can put anything in there. Go for it. Extract whatever.
See, I think what's really dangerous is people like, getting some Drano and a couple buckets and watching a YouTube video. I think that's
anything
dangerous.
Starting with Drano is dangerous.
Right. Well, I believe psychedelics should be legal, and at some point, the extracting of psychedelics is going to be the same kind of thing as this was 10 years ago.
But then are people going to get all up in arms when we have the dab of psilocybin? Because it was the crack of marijuana.
When we have it?
Yeah, right. Like Deemster's cards, I've never seen those before.
As the great Joe Rogan said once, do DMT and join my cult, motherfucker.
Right.
Do you CBD or DMT?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. This is like portion through the panel. I want to thank MassCann for giving me a microphone and letting me invite a bunch of my friends up here who I have a lot of respect for and who have definitely helped me personally on a tech level. More than one of them. Love and peace to MassCann, and thanks for the microphone. And legalize DMT.
Hey, how do you think it should be regulated?
What?
Who do you think should be regulating Massachusetts or Maine?
Who should be regulating?
Yeah, how do you think it should be approached?
People that are foremost in the industry, that are already making money off the industry, that are...
I want at least one person that spent serious time in jail on the board of regulations.
Right, okay. Straight up.
How many people do you think would take a vote that would be regular, either 5 or 7, 2 from business, politics?
For every one stupid suit dummy who smoked a joint once in college and wants to be in the weed business, there should be 2 or 3 people like this.
Cool.
Because they can have lots of money, but it doesn't mean they know what they're doing. And
it's just the practical knowledge.
When you throw money at a grow, you get mold. You get an idiot that grew in a closet once in college who the investor knows, who gets PM and calls somebody like this.
Right on. Yeah. No, I think
Science.
that's it. Cool. Thank you.
Pearson, you're awesome. I love you, buddy. All right. You guys got anything else you want to talk about? Aside from Deemsters? What do you think about all these cops flying around looking at us? I don't really like it.
They're excited.
Yeah, I haven't seen any drones. If you see any drones, watch out.
I do want to give a good shout out to DJ Slim over there, who's been over here at Education Village all day.
Yeah, Slim crushing it all day like a German
Get our
watch.
hands together for this gentleman right here.
This dude's been marching around here for many, many years, decades in fact.
He's been with us for a long time.
Shout out to 656 right over there. What's up, guys?
What's 656?
All right. So let's make some Deemsters. All right. But Slim, I love you. That's about it.
But really, shouldn't we just be trying to
Yo,
synthesize
can y'all
our
make
own
some noise
thought?
for the members of the panelists, and please let them know where they can find you at online, Instagram. Remind them, let them know.
Follow us at HBR Confections on Instagram.
On Instagram, my tag is Root Shamanic.
You can find me at the HoneyComb Farm on Instagram, or you can find me in your local dispensary.
All right, ladies and gentlemen.